the reason some of these loads suck is just because sometimes the customers are terrible. Well, I'm over here in New Albany once again at the Regal. Yay. D's. Brand new windshield. Alright. I'm just hoping it's not like, 2 years ago when I ended up putting 5 windshields in my truck in a 6-week period. It just, I could not stop getting my windshields broken. I changed the driver's side windshield on my old Pete twice that month, and 3 times I changed the passenger side. It was nuts. Anyhow, customers. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ever going to get the hang of this truck. It's been a decent truck so far. It's a real money maker, but it's the storage. Just the layout on this truck is just... I could see what they were going for, and it's like every part of it fell short. It's like you're just almost there. But this is more of a truck designed for some guy who's going to be out for the week and home on the weekends. You think with all this space there would be more storage? No. But customers, well, I was thinking about this the other day, and there's just certain customers I like, certain customers I hate. Truthfully, I prefer to do just drop and hook and not even deal with customers if I don't have to. That's why in the summertime I do a lot of, late night, midnight stuff. I can fly in, I can fly out, and I don't have to deal with anybody. And traffic's a lot lighter too. But some customers are just terrible. And I have to deal with those from time to time too. And there are a lot of things I've discovered in dealing with terrible customers that have really helped me along. So one of the first things you have to ask yourself when you get a bad customer, is it the business, the organization, or is it the people who work there? I've been to a lot of chain stores where some are good and some aren't. It's the people. But there's one particular customer that made me think of this, to where their policies just not only do they foster the laziness in everybody there, but they're just a horrible company business-wise to deal with. Unpleasant and very hard to deal with. So, but when you're dealing with companies like that, when I have the choice, which I do most of the time, I just ignore them. There's certain loads that when you're dealing with customers to pick up, certain companies that if the loads aren't ready, I won't haul them. I've always been of the opinion that freight should wait on you. You don't wait on freight. Not like these meat packers want you to do. These meat packers are running a scam. So what do I mean by scam? I've been around this game long enough and talked to enough loadout people and have friends that have worked in some of these places and whatnot, to where they'll flat tell you they have a load time for everything. Everything is scheduled. They know when these are supposed to be loaded. They know when they're supposed to be finished. This isn't this arbitrary 36-hour window that they give you. It's supposed to be loaded at a particular time. Now, when you're dealing with, especially after dark, a lot of these loads end up being late because some idiot doesn't want to do the paperwork, or won't pick the paperwork and take it to the guard shack, or they just wait till they get off work so they take it all at once, while you've got 35 and 40 drivers sitting there waiting on loads that have been done for 6 hours. I've sat there and seen my load loaded for a day and a half and they wouldn't give it to me. Oh, it's in testing, it's this, that, the other thing, or we don't know why. It's not been billed out yet. We're waiting for it to be billed out yet. Played that game more than enough too. And so I have a problem with that. But there's another thing about these meat packers that I don't like. One of the problems that I was having with some of these meat packers is that, well, they do all their own scheduling now. You don't do that. I remember when Tyson changed that, we used to be able to schedule it ourselves and change the appointment if we needed to, this or that. Tyson took all that away. Most of these other meat plants have too. There's literally, you're at their mercy no matter what. So if you need something changed or all that, there's fees involved in this, that, and the other thing. But part of the problem that I have is that when it comes to detention, they all pay them on the back end. And they'll sit there and change their load times. They'll sit there and change their drop dead times. They'll do all of this stuff without telling anybody. No call, no show, no email. If we do this, we lose the job. We lose the freight. If they do this, it's a Tuesday. And, you know, if you ran any other business this way, you wouldn't have your business. And I don't understand that. So when you're sitting there dealing with these things, you know, when it comes to me and meat hauling, I do it because it's part of what I do. That's part of hauling a refrigerated freight. But there's a few customers and a few places that I don't go. And when it comes to places I don't go, there's a few very real reasons why. One of the places I don't go, very, very rarely, is AWG. What a garbage company. If you go there, you just build the detention in from the moment you get there. But a problem that I'm having with a lot of these AWGs, just like I have with Sysco's, is there's no parking anywhere. But they want you there. And with e-logs, it makes it impossible. And like the one in South Haven, Mississippi, you've got 15 minutes to get to the door. The nearest place to park legally is 25 minutes away. You could park out on the street, but it's Sophie's choice whether you're going to get a ticket that night or not, a parking ticket. So it's just an awful experience. And truthfully, if they don't have parking close, or there's not something nearby, or they're not making arrangements, so they don't let you park, out front or something like that, I'll reject them every time. Absolutely every time. I don't care how much it pays. It's just, sometimes you just have to time out. We got Sysco's are like that. They want you there, and they want you there at all hours of the night, but you're not allowed to park anywhere on the property at all. And some of these Sysco's we go to, there's just nowhere. They're in the middle of these industrial areas in town, no trucks parking anywhere, this, that, the other thing. So basically, you sit there, you blow your clock, and for what? For literally nothing. Because they wouldn't let you park. You got to start your clock to go in. And that's a problem that we've been having with e-logs. So let's sit there, blow the clock, and take 5, 6, 7 hours to unload. And then you got to fight them for detention. The detention doesn't even make up for the lost time. So there's a lot of loads like that I've had problems with. Now, don't get me wrong, I do Sysco's, I do AWGs, and things of that nature. I mean, it's part of doing the job. It doesn't mean I have to like it. Now, I have done quite a few loads to where the job is absolutely, the loading is great, the run is great, the pay is great, but the final out is just awful. Had a load like this coming out of the house one time, taking it up to this place will remain unnamed. They're in an old Kmart building in Sioux Falls. And I went in there and I was abused. I was mistreated. I was yelled at. I was cursed out to my face. I was called everything but a white man. And management seemed to be okay with all of it. And I said, I'll pick up the load. I'll do my dispatcher a solid. I said, but if you ever want it delivered, I said, I'll drop it at the yard. You can have somebody else drag it over there. I said, I will never darken their doorstep again. And to this day, I have not. Won't do it again. You know, there's a lot of things I'll put up with, but abuse like that, I won't. So, one of the problems that we have with, though, is dock times. Since the dawn of time, unloading times have been just insane. You know, in the e-logs, and they were like, oh, no, we'll work with shippers and receivers. Yeah, we all laughed at that. We knew that was crap. And we were right, it was. But part of the problem I have is we're sitting there paying lumping fees. Now, don't get me wrong, I get reimbursed for it. But it's a complete round robin. It's just a money dodge. It's a tax dodge. So they're paying a company to unload the truck and to palletize it and break it down and all that. Well, when did that become my problem? To this day, this has never been my problem. You know, it's your freight. You paid the bills. You're paying me. Now I have to pay you to take the freight you paid me to haul off the truck in your dock. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I said it's just a money dodge. It's a complete scam. And some of these unloading companies, now there's been one in particular that seems to be taking over everything. And truthfully, you can usually tell if you're there at 6 in the morning, you want the first appointments. If you're there at 6 in the morning, you'll be out by 9 or 10, most likely. If you have a 9:30, 10 o'clock appointment, it'll be lunch. And if you have a 10:30 or 11, you're going to be there till 2:30. They'll milk it out till they go home. And that's been the problem that I've had. This is not 2-hour window. This is 2, 4, 6, 8 hours. Like, thankfully not 8 in a long time. But I've always asked the question, when did breaking down freight become my problem? It's never been my problem. Get your crap off my truck. It's all the same thing, you know. But they've got to count it, break it down, this, that, and the other thing. You know what? Take it off my truck, count it. You can break it down on your own time. But life doesn't work that way, truthfully, and I wish lumping services would be abolished. But they're not. They're here, and you got to deal with reality now. It's not what we think. It's what it is. So, yeah. But that being said, you know, that's one of the main problems that we have, and sometimes lumping services, some places are good, sometimes they're not. Towards the bigger cities and all that, they're not. But it is what it is. So that's just a necessary evil. I've never refused to take a load over the lumping services. I think a lot of it's ridiculous, but I do know that it's not the company's fault. It's not their fault at all that they hired these people to work, and they're not paying them. The company's paying them. Of course, then they're paying us, and they start blah blah blah. Yeah, well, yeah. It's a vicious tax dodge. So, what's the point? The point is sometimes you have to do things you don't like. A lot of these customers just absolutely suck, and they're getting worse. But the economy's getting worse too. Freight's starting to drop off, and I'm having to do a lot more things I don't like. But they're paying, and we're out here for the money. I'm not altruistic at all. I'll take your money. I don't do this for the humanity of all good. I do it to pay my own bills. I make no apologies for that. I'll tell you that right now. But that being said, like I said, there are very few customers that I absolutely refuse to do. And then a lot of them, I do have my own druthers. Truthfully, like I said, that's why I prefer to do drop and hook. And if you're lucky enough to be in a position like I am, to where you can do a little more picking and choosing, and you can kind of figure it out, I hope you do get a good route plan. You know, sometimes it's not about what the load pays. It's what's on the back end. So what is your next 5 steps? What do I mean by back end? Where's this load going? There's a lot of loads that I don't like that I take because I know they pay good, but they're going to a really good area. The only real criticism I would ever have about where I work, and it's my own personal druthers, honestly. It's not them, really. Is that it seems like everything's out and back. There's never any real loop building, or it's not bouncing back. In fact, you're out, you're back, you're out, you're back. And that works for a lot of people. I mean, people can run out, run back. They get their miles for the week, they go home. You know. So, sometimes I kind of want to have a little bit more of an adventure, but it is what it is. So when you're dealing with the back end, and you know the load is going to a place you don't like, you have to think, okay, this load is going to a customer I don't like, but it's a good area. So what's the consequence of this? Well, you got to suffer a little bit. You might have to put up with a customer you don't like, but you'll be in and out, and chances are you get the load you want, you're out. Now, like, there's one load that I can talk about that I refuse to haul, and a lot of guys do. In fact, talk to dispatch, he's having a hard time getting people to do this particular load. And E-Log has a lot to do with this, but part of the problem is it's one of these customers I talked about earlier. You go up to the Twin Cities, out of Arkansas or Missouri, and this customer, they don't care. There's no place to park within 30 miles of the place, easily 30 miles. They want you there early. They won't let you park on the property. In fact, they built a huge fence around it. It's in a horrible part of town. And they're just unrelenting. They don't care. Be there. So, not only that, the load pays okay. And yeah, you can do it. But the other problem that I have is that every load I get out of the Twin Cities there, of the last 6 loads I've hauled, 5 of them have been overweight. And to find a CAT scale around the Twin Cities is, by the time you finally get one and get it all scaled out, you're 4.5 hours into your day. And half the time I just run it and dodge the scales till I get where I'm going, because most of them just go back to Sioux Falls. But not only that, these loads don't pay. Just nothing pays out there. So that, I found it, sometimes it's just better to bounce to where you know the load is than to waste all that time with an overweight load, waste the fuel, waste the time, when you could just basically bounce because you're basically paying gas money to get there. So I've had those instances before, because some customers are just terrible. But it also brings up something math related that's actually kind of funny. So I go to a place on the east side of Indianapolis a lot. I like going there. Strop and Hook, decent enough people. It's east of Indy, and there's a few places to park if you get there early enough. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So I get unloaded, and I can either sit around and wait for this. They doesn't have a load. He doesn't know when this is going to be loaded. Or I can bounce 350 miles to a Tyson plant to pick up a load that's already loaded. I sat there one time, did the math. The pay, the math, all that. I actually made more money bouncing to the Tyson plant to pick up a preloaded trailer than I would have sitting around waiting a day to pick up this other load, going to roughly the same place. So these are the kind of things that sometimes you have to really judge. Is this customer worth it? Is sitting around worth it? Sometimes sitting around is, but sometimes it's better to bounce. So it comes down to this. Is the customer worth it? And the customer is on both ends, where you picked up, where you delivered. Because basically, where you picked up is your customer, because you're picking up their freight. Where you delivered is your customer's customer, because you're basically doing a transfer for them. That being said, is it worth it? Is the pay worth the job? Is the customer worth the bounce? These are questions you have to ask. Is the customer worth it? Like I said, there's a lot of customers we deal with that are not worth it. I had one load one time that they paid me, it was like $3.15 a mile to basically drag an empty trailer. 4 stops. No, it's 5 stops across the Midwest, starting in Sioux Falls, Nebraska, Missouri, Illinois, Cincinnati. But then they wanted me to haul, basically the same amount of product back, but it pays well enough you can bounce back. Absolutely not. So then somebody gets a bright idea that they're going to double dip, and they send me up to Melrose Park to haul loads of paper back for 69 cents a mile. I said, I will never do this load again. It's the best paying load I'll never do again. Is the load worth it? Sometimes it's not about money. Sometimes it's just about personalities. Sometimes it's just about parking. Sometimes it's just a little bit of both. So that's what you have to decide. Is the load worth it? There's a lot of good loads out there, and then there's a lot of bad loads out there. And trust me when I tell you this, pay is secondary to all of this. Don't get me wrong, we do it for the pay. If you're 69 cents a mile, I wasted a lot of time and money doing that. I'll never do that again. I flat out told them I'd never do that again. And I haven't. There's a lot of loads that I've sat there and they call me up and they're like, I got this load out of this plant. It deadlines out. And I say, stop right there. We've had this discussion. If it's not loaded, I don't want it. And that's one of those meat plants that has a notorious history of just changing things without telling anybody. And in fact, in the last 2 months, I know 3-4 guys that this has happened to at our company. So that tells me that it's happening a lot, because if it's 3-4 guys in the last month and a half at our company, that tells me that it's happening a lot. And I don't have time for that. I'm not going to sit there, because I don't get paid for that. They changed the deadline, they changed the load time, they cancel loads. Like they had one load, they canceled on the guy, and he sat there another day. Nobody would tell him what was going on, no phone calls, no nothing, and then he realized he lost an entire day because, nobody would tell anybody anything. And it wasn't our company's fault, it was our customer's fault. So these are a lot of things you have to weigh. And is the customer worth it? Is the pay worth it? Sometimes the pay's a little light, but the destination is great. So these are a lot of factors that you kind of have to really think long and hard about when it comes to these things. Is it worth it? Is the customer worth it? And like I said, there's a lot of customers out there that just ain't worth it. And sometimes it's not about the money. So guys, when you're out there picking and choosing and trying to figure out what you're doing, you have to be very discerning. Now, don't get me wrong. You just can't be all up in arms and hot. I just don't want to do this because. Have a very valid reason. Because you can burn bridges out here. And sometimes I end up doing some of these customers that I absolutely hate, because sometimes it is my turn in the barrel. But sometimes the dispatcher does need help, and a lot of times they will they'll make it up to you on the back end too. The back end's something you always need to think about. But I always tell them, don't ever use the word favor. Don't ever use the word favor with me, because that will get you nowhere. That being said, guys, I'm going to leave you with this. I always say this: go out and be profitable. And part of being profitable is being very conscious about what you're doing on the back end, on the front end. What does the load pay? Where is it going? What am I getting out of there? And sometimes, like I said, like this load here, they wanted me to do a load yesterday. I told them no, because it was a good filler load. It's not a good primary load. And I was going to run out 420 miles, have to sit till the next day, and then they'll find me something back. No, I wasn't going to do that. If I was already up in the area, absolutely, I would have jumped all over it. But they're like, well, then you're going to sit till tomorrow. And I said, you know what? I'll take that gamble. I did. And I'm making better money today. In fact, I'm making more on this load than I would have made on both of those loads front and back. And I wasted less time. So these are the things you have to think about. Sometimes a gamble is just that. It's a gamble. Sometimes it pays off. So go out there, guys. Be profitable. I'm not saying you got to be hard-nosed about all of this, and I'm not saying you got to be a jerk. And sometimes you do have to, throw a little at your dispatcher, just to basically stay on their good side. But for the most part, be discerning about what you're doing. You ain't got to be a jerk about it, but be mindful and be profitable. And after you're at this for a while and you start figuring out what loop works for you, because the same loop doesn't work for everybody, figure out what works for you, and things will start falling into place. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you next video.